No worries. Good morning. Two
Good
times on the
morning.
journey. Hello, Liz. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you.
Oh,
You?
such a glorious day. As we know, I'm up here in on the Gold Coast in Queensland, and even though it's a little bit cool, it is such a glorious day. The sky is so blue, and you're all the way down in Tassie. What's the weather like there?
Chilly. It is at the moment 4 degrees, but it also has now the soup's cleared, a very expansive blue sky and the sun is out. So it will be bearable.
Oh, it's lovely because you're sitting in such a lovely space with the sun streaming in the window behind you. So it does look like you have a halo.
Good to know it hasn't slipped already.
Oh, well, it's down on your shoulders now, so you never know. You never
And the
know.
day hasn't even got very far.
Oh dear. So our last talk and our last conversation was about freedom, and um, I think I think that's our search. Most of the people that I talk with and who come and see me, when it comes right down to it, are looking for freedom and freedom to be themselves. So, you know, I think it would be a good time to really delve now into what creates our freedom, because we know what creates our prison. We've talked about what creates our limits and our prisons. Um, so now we can talk about how to keep the doors open to freedom once we've actually unlocked the prison gates. So, I know that sounds very complicated, doesn't it? But to keep it really simple, we'll talk about boundaries.
Yeah, I
So
don't
I'll
think it's
leave it up.
complicated at all because I think, that's exactly what we have been living in and are still living in is a prison in our inner world and our outer world, as we've talked before. So, you know, freedom is, I think, a search and probably be just beginning for many because people are stepping back going, wow, is this what I really want to do? But as we've talked before, that search for freedom does begin on the work within on ourselves, which is where we're going to start with the boundaries.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, because I was thinking, what would it be like? What would it feel like to be in a in a in a prison cell? And for me, on a physical level, um, when I'm even thinking about it, I'm feeling as if every step I take, which in whatever direction, there's a concrete wall there, and it's like you're bouncing off it. So it just confines us so much when we can only rattle around inside those confining walls. And then, as we talked about last week, we begin to desire more and to explore why we haven't got more. So when we're, and as I was saying, if we start pushing those walls out a bit and seeing if it's safe to be, to push those walls out and to go beyond the boundaries that we've already set, which is all been set in our childhood. What makes us safe, what makes us feel safe and loved. So then when we've got into the adult world and we're starting to explore a bigger world, we start breaking through those limitations and boundaries that we've had all our lives and not understood that they are limiting. And then all of a sudden you know, we have that wonderful moment of going, no, I'm not going to please you, and I'm not going to please you. I'm going to ask what pleases me. And then it's like, oh, we do that, and it's really uncomfortable often. But once we've done it, it's like, "Oh, that feels good." But the pattern is so set. It's so set that we very easily slide back into the safe place where we're safe and where we can ensure that we are loved. So that's when we can start for ourselves, not for others, but we can start placing boundaries with situations, with ourselves, and with others. That's my lecture for the day.
Wonderful. And there are some gems in there, many gems, like, that living in that imprisoned, like we have been imprisoned without being aware of it. And simply because, as you said, we come into this world and we are given the truth from outside of us, from the families, the community, the schools, and everything else. So we've let go of that truth of ourselves. So we go through life not knowing who we truly are. And I know for many of us, we all of a sudden one day, and it does just feel like it happens one day, we wake up and we go, who am I?
Mm,
Outside of being the mother, the
mm,
wife, the nurse, the
mm.
teacher, or whatever. And then we start to explore that, as you said, going, is this my truth? Is this what I really wanted to do? Is this what I want to do or say or be? And interesting, when you were talking, what came up is the word resistance. Because when we start to explore who we are and perhaps what's more of our truth and not someone else's, it meets with not only outside resistance, but our own resistance, because we've been programmed for so long to think of ourselves as selfish. So there's so many resistance to starting to set those boundaries and to explore what is it that I truly want, which makes it quite challenging to continue doing that, because people like us doing what they think's right through their filters. And to
Yeah.
start doing that, people don't like that and they push back. And then we start questioning ourselves, and then we shut down again and go back into those confined, limiting beliefs and boundaries, or that imprisonment, which it really, really
Mm,
is.
mm. Yeah, and as you said, it's like people, because we introduce ourselves to people and to situations and to groups often before we have this aha moment of, hang on a minute, who am I pleasing here? So they have an expectation of who we're going to be and who we are, because that's who we were when we first encountered these people, whether it be family, whether it be new friends or old friends, classmates, whatever. That's who we were being. Sorry, it's not who we were being, in order to fit in within the parameters of how we learned to be us, which is all based on somebody else's beliefs and of how we can survive in the world. Most of the time our parents do give us all of these confinements to keep us safe.
But also from their own
Out
limiting
of their own
confinements.
limitations. That's right. Yes.
And that's why we've
Right.
continued these limiting
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
confinements. But as you said, you go into that group, but you have a mask for that group. Like
Yes.
we behave in different scenarios, and sometimes they overlap and they get and buttons get pushed and you think, oh, I shouldn't be saying that in this particular one. That's for that environment. And you get totally lost on who I truly am. And that's where it all overlaps.
Yeah.
And to start taking those away to be one as opposed to 5, 10 different masks for 10 different things is
Yeah.
that is where it becomes
Yeah.
complicated and you start questioning. But it does begin with, as you said, boundaries and maybe just questioning, is this for me? Am I doing this for me or is that for someone else?
Yes. Yeah. To fit in with somebody else's comfort zone. So we all, it comes back to a comfort zone. I used to be comfortable doing this. I used to be comfortable. I go back to being a people pleaser because it's so common and it's such a big issue. And most of us are brought up, I remember right from a little girl, we had a beautiful family that we were family friends with. And we were in New Zealand, we used to go to the football every Saturday and during football season, rugby season. And so we'd always go to these friends who lived not far from the rugby field or stadium. And I remember this beautiful, they were just such a lovely family. And the man was lovely. I was very kind of shy little girl. So and the father, or the husband, the father, he was lovely, and he'd always come and try and give me a hug, and it was absolutely beautiful. And I'd run, I would be terrified, and I'd never once gave this man a hug. And I was only little, and he died. And I lived with that for such a long time that I had never given this man a hug. And I don't know, somewhere entwined in there was, if I had have given him a hug, then perhaps his family wouldn't have been so sad and wouldn't have lost their father. Convoluted, I know, but that's the thing, because it was like, so, because I was always told, you go and give them a hug, go and give this. It was one thing I couldn't do. I was, so it was so confining. But for the rest of my life, for a long time, I was a people pleaser. I would do whatever it was to not be, to stay small.
But also to fit in.
And to fit in, yeah, but just stay small. So, yeah, so people pleasing is such a big one, and it's so confining. And I can't remember why I started saying that and why I started talking about that. But
we're talking about comfort zones.
Yeah, so it was easier for me. It was more comfortable for me to tiptoe up and go than to go, no, I don't want to do that. So, I make sure with every child I meet, even I don't care if it's my grandchildren, whatever, it's like, if they don't feel like hugging, it's like, no, please don't make them. Please don't make them. Just, I'll stay over here, because it's scary stuff. But yeah, so that the comfort zone for me was more comfortable for me to go against my instincts than it was to stand up and say, no, I don't want to do that. So a lot of my work involves helping people taking steps, and some of them can be very, very, very very accomplished people who they're limitation is that ability to go and to say no. So it's yeah, it's just really interesting how it sticks with us until we're ready. If that's our big hurdle, then it will stick with us unless we start putting something in place, to help us and to remind us, okay, you are safe. You are safe. What's the worst thing that can happen? If you go against how someone's expectations of how you're going to behave and how you are going to fill their needs, then what's the worst thing that can happen? Because deep down, there's that terror that they're not going to love us anymore. And sometimes it might be someone that we're not particularly worried if they're in our lives or not. But there's still that huge invisible block or hurdle that we need to get over. So it's good to practice with people who are not so close, and jump up and down and go, no, because, were you ever allowed to throw a tantrum when you were little?
Well, no, it doesn't fit into what, is it, what's
Yes.
allowed, really.
Yeah, and I was never allowed to throw a tantrum. So I remember quite a few years ago when we had I used to do inner child workshops, and we'd have a whole session on throwing tantrums. It was great, and then spend the rest of the week going, no, didn't matter what to, but it was such good practice,
Yeah, just touching on some of the things you just said then, comfort zone is a really big one for many of us because, we think we're comfortable. We're told to, you finish school and you go to uni, you get a job and it's expected you go and do this, or, you get married, you have 2.5 children, or you do this and, and you think you get to a place where you're comfortable in this comfort zone. But a big thing is there wouldn't be, and I think it's a really high percentage of people that aren't happy in that comfort zone because, as we were talking, we started living someone else's belief and we go into a relationship not being who we are. And at this point, we don't know who we are. We just know that this is expected and we think we're happy. And then you sort of get back and you think, well, I've got this job, I've got my children, I've got my husband, I'm doing this, this, and this. I'm comfortable. I should be happy. And that's where people start questioning. And then you go, am I happy though? And when you start actually going, am I really happy in this job? Apart from the fact that the fear, as you said, of loss, whether it be money,
Yes.
people, or whatever, keeps us in a comfort zone that we think we're happy in. But underneath that, we're not necessarily happy playing out our lives with our masks on, thinking, and that's where we start to question, I guess. And as you said, you can start maybe boundaries to ourselves because you can ask, am I really happy going to this job? And if the answer is no, look at why you're doing it then and see if you can do something that really feeds your soul. And there's sort of boundaries and putting things in places as well by changing things. And that goes back to what I said, it's going to push people's buttons and they'll resist because they want you confined in this limiting space of where you are. And that's the big thing. It isn't easy, but when we really authentically go, am I really happy? What can I do to change that and make those steps and as you say, whether it be just people pleasing to start with, people go, we come and do this, we come and do this. And you do it because we're told that it's selfish not to help or whatever. But when you start going, do I really want to do that? And what would be the worst scenario? You might upset somebody, but that's their stuff, not yours. I really actually just want to stay in today and take care of myself or do something. So starting to do those. So as you said, no, but politely, I can't do that today. You don't have to explain. It's no one else's business why you can't do that.
Yeah.
And it does go back to, the thing that the quote that I've always, you're not doing any harm to
Yeah,
another by
yeah,
honoring yourself and setting a boundary and perhaps putting yourself in a more comfortable situational place.
yes, yeah. And who's it? Yes, and always, I think that needing to have dialogue and that dialogue with ourselves, that's the biggest, when we can, and again, comes back to we're always talking about being present and being, in the moment. So, coming back to, can I feel my feet on the ground? Can I feel my bottom on the chair? Can I feel my clothes on my skin? Am I here? Am I present? Can I talk to you? Yeah. Can I talk to you? Because then we're having that conversation with ourselves and not our subconscious or our ego self, which is when we're talking to our ego self. And that's how to tell the difference, isn't it? When we're talking to our ego selves, it's like, do I really want to do this? And it might be, well, not really, but you better do it. It'd be easier, it'd be better for you to do it because then you're not going to feel uncomfortable and you're going to make them happy. So that as soon as we hear a justification of why, that's the ego or the subconscious self. But when we're in that present moment, and that is so fleeting, and we get in the present moment, we start to take a breath right down to the belly, then we can have that dialogue with our authentic self. Do I really want to do this? Shall we do this? No. All right then. Okay. What do you want to do? I want to sit in the window with the sun shining through and feel warm in my toes. That's what I want to do. All right then. That's what we'll do. And so quite often when we're I love doing this exercise because when I'm talking like that, everything aligns. Every part of me smiles and it's like, okay. As soon as I take my attention off being present, then in slides my subconscious. What are you doing sitting in the window? You're just being lazy.
Mm.
What about such and such? So then we start seeing that dichotomy. We start seeing the two parts of us. And then you talk about the 5 parts of us. I talk about the 100 parts of us that are all busy trying to be who through all of our years we've been for every other person, every situation. It is so comforting, I think, to just be in that moment. And as I said, it may be just for 5 minutes. And if 5 minutes in the present moment with your authentic self is a lifetime, an absolute lifetime. Most of us never ever experience it, except by accident.
You're right, though, because when you start communicating with self,
Mm.
allowing the ego mind that has kept us safe for eons and starting to question and listening to that inner truth of what you do, that's when you can see that you perhaps are doing something that isn't making you happy. But what I was also thinking, because we've had a few conversations in recently about communication, and while you were talking then, I thought that to communicate with self is the better way to go. Because if you say no to somebody and back it up with a justification, you're then going to get someone else's reply from their filters that's going to make you feel bad. So you're going to go and do it anyway. So you've lost that whole communication with self, where we're still people pleasing or going to do something because it's lazy or selfish.
Yeah.
So sometimes when we don't want to do something, and as you said, just, I can't do that today, not backing it up with a justification to allow somebody to come back with their perception, where we then start questioning, is probably the easier way to go. No, I just simply can't do this today.
Mm.
No explanation. Nobody needs it because it's your stuff, and then go off and do that. And when that your ego and that's having this little bit of thing, at least it's your inner truth that you can go, okay, why? And that's where you can start working with these beliefs and unraveling it. But to communicate and be pulled back into someone else's, you will never get to that point where you can start going, oh, is this serving me? Is that?
Yes. And it's fine. There is, you can make it a process. And I think that would be great for our next podcast, because we're nearly at the end of this one, for goodness sake.
Wow.
I think it would be great to actually chat about that, because if we begin, as you say, if we begin with ourselves, and start having those conversations and the dialogues with our authentic self, but when we've discovered, and it's like a whole revelation, oh my gosh, the difference in how I feel just by saying I want to sit in the window and just enjoy the sunlight coming through, as opposed to hearing that little chatterbox of the subconscious going, you can't do that. You can't do that. Why would you be so lazy? You should be out doing this. So that's where a great place to start putting boundaries in is with our own self.
Yeah, absolutely.
Start with yourself, because it's like you were saying, if we start saying no out there, especially when it's to someone who's known us for a long time, then we get this friction and we get this resistance. And often we are not strong enough. We haven't built that muscle strongly enough and powerfully enough to begin to say, no, I choose not to do that now. So, I think it might be a good idea to wrap this up now, and perhaps just, come back next week and dive into placing those boundaries. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we make it complicated, and it is complicated, but it's all tied in, people are sitting, with our self-worth and what we allow ourselves to do. It's, it does begin with us. It doesn't matter how we end it always comes back to us.
Yeah, it does.
We're the only ones that can do it. It begins and start. It's us that we
Absolutely.
have to.
Well, that's where we get really profound, because it's all about us.
It's all about us.
Most of us were taught, because a lot of us in the Western world were brought up to obey the rules, obey society's rules, obey religion's rules, and always put ourselves last. If we didn't, we'd be selfish. It's all about us, because there's only us in our world, only us. But anyway, let's wrap it up here. So lovely to talk to you again, and we will come back and keep on talking next week.
Lovely.
Take care.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Liz.
Bye.
Bye.